Hi there, good afternoon. What's up? So, how's it going for you? I hope you're attending all of these sessions and identifying. See, when you are close to 200 days away from the exam, the most important thing is to practice and then to identify those areas, those aspects that bother you. So, I hope that you're practicing every day and that this practice is helping you identify weaknesses in your preparation plan so that you can go ahead and take care of those. So I welcome you to BYJU'S Exam Prep channel dedicated to taking you over to the finish line when it comes to the B school selection process. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. My name is Vikrant. I've been teaching and coaching people for 22 years where I basically help them with all things related to English and communication skills. Additionally, I also give a lot of inputs on the psychological aspects of preparation thanks to my background. So I am your personal coach for all of these things here. Let's go ahead and start. So any concerns otherwise? Is there something that has been bothering you, something that you want to talk about? Then we can dive into that. Sonali, Nishant, and only G. That's interesting. Hope you guys are doing really very well and you're also benefiting from these sessions. So here's a quick overview of VARC in the CAT exam. So in the last 5 years, we've had 3 different patterns that have been used. So right from 24 questions to VA to 34 questions to VA to 24 questions to VA. Right. So last year we had 24 questions out of a total of 66. The further breakup was we had 4. Excuse me for a bit. We had 4 passages where every passage had 4 questions and the average length of these passages was around 500 words. So 490 to around 527. This was the range that we witnessed last year. And then there is this question type called para completion which replaced paragraph odd one out. So these are the kind of things. Now, but prior to that, instead of para completion, we happen to have paragraph odd one out questions. So my plan for today is very simple, very straightforward. We pick up a challenging reading comprehension passage from sociology. So by now, if you've been with me or if you've looked at the analysis of the last few years, you'd realize that passages come from different genres, and a couple of subject matters that have been very prominent in the recent past are areas like sociology and anthropology, science and technology, zoology. So today I've decided to pick up a passage from sociology, and in the previous 4 sessions we have talked about para jumbles, para summary, para completion. Paragraph odd one out has been missing from action, so we'll go ahead and have a look at some of these paragraph odd one out questions as well. And before we do that, let me quickly take some of your questions. Nishant, how to improve accuracy in para jumbles? Nishant, I took a session on para jumbles on the app a few days ago. Or we can actually schedule another one on our YouTube channel soon enough. Let us see. But until then, treat it as a puzzle where the sentences have clues scattered around. Your job is to identify those clues and then use them to figure out a sequence. Then G, sir, I could not convert SIBM. Whoa. G, let's hope that your call gets converted. But in case it does not, then I think it makes a lot of sense, obviously, to prepare again. And you were that close, actually, you know. So when you say could not clear the sectional cutoffs, which section worried you the most? And Sonali, don't worry, we'd get adequate practice of para jumbles as well. So we dive into that too. But let us start with our passage today. So passage 1, are you ready? So a few moments from now, you will have a part of a passage appear on the screen. Read it. The moment you are done reading it, let me know in the comment box. Just quickly type in a yes or done, and then I can take you over to the next slide. Okay, and mind you, although we are live, but there is a lag of around 15-16 seconds. So keep that in mind while interacting with me over the chat window. So there you go. Your passage on the screen. Oh, Shraddha, that was really very fast. Terrific. I just need confirmation from one or two more individuals before we can move on. Fantastic. Okay, so here we go. Oh, fantastic. That was quick. Okay, here is the next. Okay. Oh, Nishan, this time around you were very quick, huh? The next part. All right. Fantastic. So, a quick question. What is the topic here? Which subject matter does this particular passage deal with? So, what's the subject matter here? I say racial, so it basically focuses on racial discrimination and prejudice. Right? So that's the key aspect that it goes ahead and talks about. Nishant, sociology is the domain that it belongs to. Sorry. But it's the key, right? So one of the basic things that we need to figure out once we have done reading a passage is the subject matter that it touches upon. Apart from that, we also need to figure out the purpose of the passage, and then maybe the key idea of every paragraph. So train your mind to think along these three lines, and you would be able to generate a very effective overview of whichever passage that you read. Okay, so here is your first question on the screen. Give me 4 answers and I will start the discussion. Okay, so I have 4 answers. Let us start. So first up, let me take you back to the relevant part where the group level activity was talked about. So here it is. We notice we are talking about different perspectives regarding the accuracy of those racial stereotypes and their usefulness. There are some social psychologists who believe that it is just faulty or inflexible generalization. So generalization is where you look at a few elements of a particular category, and the results that you arrive at on the basis of your observation, you apply it to the entire category. Okay, so for example, if somebody says all Punjabis are loud, right? I'm Punjabi, we at times hear that we are party lovers, we prefer butter chicken, rajma chawal. These are called generalizations, right or wrong, but the author here says that these are faulty generalizations, which means that they're wrong, or these are inflexible generalizations, a generalization that we are resistant to change even when new data, new information comes in. And then there is another perspective. Economic theories of statistical discrimination emphasize the cognitive utility of group estimates as a means of dealing with the problems of uncertainty. So see, you and I, we are supposed to take decisions routinely in our life. And one of the key characteristics of the decision making process is uncertainty. We do not have enough information available, yet we are supposed to take decisions. So what do? We at times rely on generalizations. For example, let us say that I want to buy a new computer and I need some advice on buying that new computer. I look around and I see 4 individuals sitting there. There is a person who has done his history honors. Then I see a student who's doing his bachelor's in commerce and another individual sitting close by who is doing his BTech. So 3 people sitting around me. I need information on computers. Whom should I ask? I think in all probability, most of us are likely to say BTech guy. Why? Because engineers are tech savvy. You realize that's a generalization. Is that necessarily true? Is it true that this particular engineer will be able to give me sound advice? Maybe in this group of 3, it is the history honors guy who's the most tech savvy. We don't know. But then, on an average, in general, engineers are more tech savvy. So I'd end up saving my time by approaching the engineer first. Isn't it? So that's how we deal with problems of uncertainty, using generalization. And then it says group level estimates of difficult to observe characteristics may provide useful information in the screening of individual applicants. And look at the examples: average productivity, risk of loan default. Now let's go back. So assessing risk of credit card payment defaults by race or ethnicity. It is definitely an example of a group level activity which is leading to racial discrimination. Let's look at B. Associating a certain race as being violent, lazy and dependent on welfare. It is an example of racial discrimination, yes, but is it an example of a group level activity? B is more of an example of this first half. It is not an example of the group level activity where you are trying to look for difficult to observe characteristics in order to screen people. In B, there is no screening, and then some of these things are not difficult to observe. For example, dependent on welfare. Why is it difficult to observe? It's a fact. You can very easily figure that out, and that is why I think when I compare A with B, B should be eliminated and A should be chosen as our answer. C and D, I think all of you have eliminated, so I'd not talk about it. You were absolutely right in ruling those 2 out. But the correct answer to question number 1 should be A. Right? So interpreting it correctly, that is very, very, very important for us. Moving on. Here is your next question. What would be a suitable title for the passage? Go ahead, give it a shot. Okay. So I look at these answers and we're getting B, we're getting D. So let us check. So let's just go through these quickly. A, what causes racial discrimination? Let's just ask ourselves, what is the cause behind racial discrimination according to the passage? And we won't have any answer because the author has not provided us with reasons for racial discriminations. All he has stated is that there are conscious and unconscious biases towards certain races, but it does not explicitly give us the causes. Option B, the sociology of racial discrimination. Now, this is something that I'd consider a very broad title. Why? Because the passage discusses the racial prejudice against African Americans and Hispanics in the American society. So this basically makes it way too broad. When you look at sociology, it needs to cover many more races than just these two, that too in just one given context. The stereotyping of races, again, the stereotyping of races has been mentioned in only one particular passage, and that too with the intent to explore what leads to the stereotyping. There are two paragraphs that touch upon that, but then that's not the core focus. This is a narrow title which will miss out on the rest of the passage. B, on the other hand, the intrapsychic factors for racial discrimination, is a lot closer. In fact, the author has used this term in the last paragraph. So most of the passage deals with overt and covert racism that occurs through our internal mental processes right from the second paragraph onwards, where we move away from sociology to psychology. The entire focus is on the internal, subconscious, covert kind of biases, and therefore I think intrapsychic factors is going to be a very appropriate word. This basically means internal mental processes, and thus we should choose D as our answer for this particular question. So D it is. And with that, let's dive into our next question. Question number 3. Take your time and give me the answer. Hmm? Four answers. Four answers, and then I start the discussion. Come on. Okay, so what does the question ask? Each of the following factors may lead to racial discrimination or prejudice except. So out of the 4, there is one which will not lead to racial discrimination or prejudice. The one that does not is the one that we are supposed to pick up. So let's look at A, the detachment between racial equality as a model for governance and government action. So in fact, this was stated in the first paragraph, where if there is a difference between policy and principle, then racism persists. So this will lead to racism, or will lead to at least the continuation of racism. Okay, B, a disaffirmation of overt forms of discrimination. Now, what do you understand by the word disaffirmation? To disaffirm basically means to refuse to confirm, to refuse to accept. So if you refuse to accept overt forms of discrimination, what will happen? Will it lead to racial discrimination, or will it lead to a reduction in racial discrimination? B, very clearly will have an opposite effect. If you refuse to accept overt forms of discrimination, then those overt forms of discrimination, that is racial discrimination, should go down. It will curtail it. It will not lead to it. So B appears to be a good answer choice, but let's look at C, political principles that strengthen the existing state of affairs. Now, what is the existing state of affairs according to the passage? Racial discrimination. So if you strengthen the existing state, it will increase the discrimination further. So it does lead to racial discrimination. D, cognitive measures such as racial stereotyping, they will obviously lead to racial prejudice. right? So out of all the four, B is the only one that will not lead to racial discrimination or prejudice or an increase in these. And that is why our answer here should be option B. Except, guys, except A, C and D all increase it. B does not. B is likely to decrease it. Here is the next question for you. According to the passage, an example of sociological research would be. So what's your take? I told you at the beginning that this is going to be a tricky passage for you. Although it's not as difficult as I would ideally want it to make, but then the real tough ones, let's take them up once we learn to deal with the moderate ones. Ready? So, let me take you to the relevant part of the passage. Look at this. Sociological research on prejudice is based largely on explicit attitudes measured through large-scale surveys. And then there are the psychologists who turn to implicit prejudice by looking at certain things. Now that we have referred to this part, you realize A is not sociological research, this is psychological research, and therefore A can be eliminated. B, on the other hand, I'll take you to the relevant part again. In B, what do you do in sociological research? Explicit attitudes measured through large scale surveys. So you notice B has that large scale survey. So this is definitely sociological. Then revelation during hypnosis, not sociological. Coming to a conclusion by observing certain races. You're not measuring explicit attitudes through surveys here. And therefore even D is not sociological. And that is why our answer here should be option B. Mind you, all that you needed to do was look at which one of the four use this. Measuring explicit attitudes through large scale surveys. Only option B does that. None of the other three do that. And here is one last question based on this passage before we move over to odd one out questions. So what's your take on fifth? According to the author, African Americans in America Shraddha, the lower the accuracy rate in practice, the more you get to learn. So don't fret. Not getting it right is a valuable pointer into the aspects that we need to focus more on. Okay, so I have one answer. Give me a few more. Right, so if I look at this question, A says African Americans in America are violent and lazy. It is not the view of the author, it is the view of some white Americans, and therefore A can be ruled out. How about B? Still endure overt forms of discrimination. So in the very first paragraph, there was this sentence, there were these lines that say, scholars have, in fact, the very beginning, scholars have characterized changes in the nature of racial prejudice over the last 50 years as shifting towards the endorsement of equal treatment by race and a repudiation of overt forms of prejudice and discrimination. So that eliminates option B. The instances are lower. The focus is more on the covert forms now. right? So it's partially true, but not completely true. So let's rule out B as well. They are subjected to both conscious and unconscious racial biases. Yes, D has not even been mentioned in the passage. Therefore, it can be ruled out, and thus our answer should be option C. Right. In fact, I think in the last paragraph, the author has mentioned that culturally embedded stereotypes about racial differences are reflected in both conscious and unconscious evaluations and may set the stage for various forms of discriminatory treatment, mentioned explicitly. So C is definitely supported by that. For D, the data are insufficient. So that takes care of the passage. And with that, let's move over to our next set of questions. Now, in each one of these questions, what are you going to see? 5 jumbled up sentences related to a topic. 4 of them part of the same paragraph. 1 does not. Your job is to identify the one that does not. And here is your first such question. Go ahead and go through these and then give me the answer. Tell me what should be chosen here. Okay, so Sonali has set the ball rolling. What else? So, see, one of the things that I want you to focus on today is the simple fact that every paragraph talks about a topic, but then it confines the topic to a particular sub aspect of it. So, when you look at an essay, you realize an essay is written around a topic. So, obviously, every paragraph within that essay will talk about that topic. But what is the difference among these different paragraphs? Although they talk about the same topic, they choose to focus on a different aspect of that topic. So when you read a paragraph, so for instance, you have 5 sentences here, you realize 4 of them can be put together to talk about or to mention one particular aspect, whereas the others there'll be one which will go beyond that. So in this context, when I look at 1, when I look at 2, 3 and 5, they can all be tied in together talking about the popularity of cricket in India. But 4 suddenly goes ahead and talks about football. In fact, if it were a para jumble, I will actually have 1, 5, 3, 2 as my sequence, where fourth does not, or fourth cannot be put in anywhere. Right. So first says really a very urban phenomenon. And let's say this itself says a lot, for India's urban phenomenon is huge and will soon be roughly half the country's total numbers. And then, but that is not the whole story. So 1, 5 and 3 connect themselves. 2 can still be used along with these. Fourth suddenly moves towards football without any connector and therefore should be left out. Shraddha, this was an odd one out. It was not a para jumble. So that is why 4. This was easier. You've actually gone on to put in much more effort than what was required. Here is the next question. Again, I'll write it on top. This is a paragraph odd one out question. So one of these 5 sentences is different from the other 4 because it does not belong to that same paragraph. Go ahead and choose that as your answer. Does happen at times, yes. Okay, Harshad, that's quick. Okay, so I agree with the answers that are emerging so far. The correct answer is indeed 3. If you look at this paragraph, uh, you realize the other 4 sentences talk about the theme of beauty in certain theories of physics. Right. Now, sentence 3 mentions that cultural notions of beauty evolve or change with changing times. But then, if physics responds to the theories of beauty and the concept of beauty keeps evolving or changing, then it stands to reason that the laws of physics should also change with time. But the laws of physics are constant irrespective of the time period. Therefore, sentence C in a way contradicts the fact that beautiful theories have a place in physics. So if I were to arrange the rest, E sort of comes up as a theme. Then sentence 1, so sentence 5 comes up with the theme. Sentence 1 gives evidence of this dogma. Thereafter, we can put in sentence 2 and sentence 4 together. So 3 is going to be our answer to this particular question. And here is the next one for you. Go ahead. This is based on management, a theme that somehow we've not been touching upon a lot quite frequently, but let's see. What's your take on 8th? And once again, this is an odd one out question for those of us who are joining in just about now. Answers, guys, answers. Okay. We have 2 answers so far. So let's see. Let's engage in a bit of elimination. Okay. So look at 5th. These skills can be divided into 2 categories, hard skills and soft skills. Which skills? Look at 3rd. A project manager needs to acquire a set of skills. So you realize this connection helps us link 3 and 5 together, and because they are linked, both of these can be ruled out as our answers. Similarly, if you look at the idea mentioned in 1st and the idea mentioned in 4th, they are connected. So 1st says project managers are expected to successfully bring their projects to fruition while keeping a tight rein on budgets and schedules. And then 4th says the project manager is truly the heart and soul of a project. So you realize 1 and 4 are again talking about the same idea. Sentence 1 gives you specifics, 4th captures that in a general way. Whereas look at 2nd. It suddenly talks about training, and that too for technical knowledge. So the rest of the sentences are talking about, oh, project managers are so amazing. Then it says they need to acquire skills. And then second says they need to, we need to conduct training to give them technical knowledge. So this does not fit in with the other two sets that we have identified. And that is why second should be the odd one out here. Right? So if I were to arrange them, I will put them as 4, 1, 3, 5. If it were a parajumble, I'd probably say 4, 1, 3, 5, leaving the second one out because it does not correspond to the theme that is created by the rest of the sentences. So even if you got some of these questions wrong, it's okay. We have a long road ahead of it. Do not lose hope and keep this in mind. When life gives you something that makes you afraid, that is when life gives you a chance to be brave, to be courageous, to show your true mettle and grow through that adversity. Okay. So some of you could not get the RC questions right, but this is definitely an opportunity to grow for you. So that's it from me. If you enjoyed working with me, don't forget to like this session and of course do subscribe to the channel and share it among your networks. And if you want to be a part of this elite group of performers who are products of our batches, then we have started our comprehensive program for CAT 23. You can benefit by enrolling into these and you can look at these amazing set of features that it has. Takes care of everything including group discussions and personal interviews. And in order to make it easy for you to join us, there is a scholarship test being conducted on 14th of May. You can write it and save up to 90% of the course fees. And then in case you need some help in terms of your strategy, here is a session by Srinivas sir. You can go through this session and it will be very useful, very impactful. And for more practice, you can head over to our app where we upload a section-wise quiz every day. So you're part of this series. Make sure that you continue remaining here with us. I'll meet you once again tomorrow at 12 with more such practice questions. Until then, stay safe, stay focused, stay in touch. And if you have any concerns, any issues, make sure that you keep bringing those to us. Until then, take care. Have a great day ahead.